Chapter 28, attaching pronominal suffixes to the verb, and this time it's going to be to the imperfect, the imperative, and the infinitive construct. Now we really will not cover attaching suffixes to the participle because attaching suffixes to the participle is really the same thing as attaching pronominal suffixes to a noun. The only thing, again, you'd have to remember is that you would have pretonic open reduction with participles. Any type of ending on a participle, an active participle, you will get reduction. So basically go back and look at chapter 12, look at those pronominal suffixes. For the noun, those you will attach to participles, whether the participle is in the singular or the plural. And when you do that, it's really fairly simple. And again, you will reduce the thematic vowel every time you put a pronominal suffix on an active participle. Now with that said, let's turn our attention to the imperfect in section 2. And again, the first thing we want to do is talk about protoforms. In the perfect, we had to talk about certain endings that had to change for protoforms. But when we come to the imperfect, we're really not changing any endings. All we're really wanting to look at is the thematic vowel. And so if you look at number 1, if the thematic vowel is a holum, that thematic vowel, the protoform of that is a chametz chatuf, and we want to keep that in mind. If the thematic vowel is a seire, well then the protoform of that would be a hirik. And if the thematic vowel is a patach, then again the protoform would be the same. It would be a patach. So that's really it for protoforms, and that's nice for the imperfect. You don't have to worry much about protoforms. The next issue is the issue of accent and reduction pattern. When you look at the suffixes, and you can see the suffixes in the next section, section 3, they're attaching them. You can see the suffixes there. The suffixes of the 2MP and the 2FP, the so-called heavy suffixes, obviously they're going to always take the accent. But for all other suffixes, the R3 of the verb will take the accent. So just remember that. So for all other suffixes that attach to, again, not the heavy suffixes, but all the other suffixes that you attach to an imperfect, the accent will always be on the third root letter. Now for the vowel reduction patterns, if you have a holum or a seire as your thematic vowel, then in an open pretonic position, you're going to get reduction of the original short vowel, the protovowel. And so with a holum or a seire, of course the chametz chatuf or the hirik will actually reduce to a vocal schwa in a pretonic open position. This again would be following the verb reduction pattern. However, if you have a patach as your thematic vowel, and it's in the pretonic open position, it will actually lengthen to a chametz and follow the noun reduction pattern. So you have to keep those two patterns in your mind. Then in the next section, again, you can see the suffixes and the boxes that go with them. Again, in the far left corner, left column, you can see the suffixes when they are directly attached to the verb. And again, they're going to be directly attached when you have something like a historic long vowel. The middle column are the boxes attached to verbs with connecting vowels. And here, again, you're going to have really no ending. You're going to just have R3, and then you're wanting to put the pronominal suffix on. Well, you're going to need a connecting vowel in order to connect the suffix onto the verb. But now you have another column, a third column on the right, and this is something known as boxes with connecting vowels, but you have an extra noon thrown in there. That noon is known as an energic noon. Originally, it supposedly gave more energy to the form, meaning more emphasis, something like that. So this is the old energic noon that you'll sometimes see. And so, again, you want to keep those three columns in mind. Again, the left column will be for the imperfects that end with a historic long vowel. The middle column is those, again, that are without any ending at all. And then the right column is really a variation, where now you have that energic noon. Let's look at the examples of an energic noon I give you down below. This is the example I give you. Here's the word Ch.28. And again, you can see the suffix, but it's the dagesh forte here. And if you were to open up the dagesh and take that dagesh out, what you would have is really another nun. And this right here is the energic nun, which used to give more energy, more emphasis to the word. Even though they still have energic forms in Hebrew, most of them, if not all of them, have lost the energic aspect. That aspect you will see in a particle na, something like that. So this is energic nun. You've got to know those, and you can get those on imperfects, but you can also get energic nuns on imperatives, and you also want to keep that in mind. On occasion, the energic nun is actually not assimilated, and so this is not an impossible form. On rare occasion, you can actually see the nun without assimilation. And so keep that in mind. If you see an extra nun before the suffix, that's just an energic nun that has not been assimilated, and you also need to be aware of that. Well, next we need to talk about specific problems. And the first problem we're going to find with a chametz chatuf. And so let's do a problem with a chametz chatuf, and that's what this is. This is the original protoform. And we're not putting the holum this time. We're putting the original chametz chatuf. This form, when it receives accent, it's closed accented. That's when you would get the holum. And now we want to attach the 2ms suffix. And when you do that, again, your accent's going to be not on R3, but it's going to have to move over to the 2ms because, again, the schwa cannot receive the accent. So, again, this is an exception. Now, what you expect is in the pretonic open, since this goes back to holum, chametz chatuf, that section, you expect this to reduce to a vocal schwa. But if you reduce that to a vocal schwa, you're going to have a real problem. And that is, you're going to have a vocal schwa, and then you're going to have a political schwa, or a medial schwa. And Hebrew, again, does not want to tolerate such things. And so, believe it or not, the short vowel will simply remain. So you're going to get a chametz chatuf here. Yik tol cha is how you'd want to pronounce this. No metheg here. And so that is a problem that you do have to watch out for, and you'll see some of those. The next specific problem we want to look at is the patach. And for that, this word will work. We'll first go with the original. Here we have a word, and again, the accent is on the 2ms suffix. You can't put it on R3 because of the schwa. And we have a similar situation as we had before, except with patach, we don't reduce, we lengthen. And therefore, that patach being in the pretonic open, we're going to lengthen it, but this time we really do need a metheg. We need a metheg because that'll tell us this is a long chametz, and this is not the short chametz. This is not the chametz chatuf that we saw in the preceding example. All right, so now we want to look at the next section of attaching suffixes and boxes to the imperfect. Again, you get 4 steps. We're going to establish the protoform, and in this case, it's simply going to be a vowel. The next step is we're going to attach the appropriate suffix and box and establish the accent. Then we're going to crunch the rules of syllables, and then we're going to adjust for any specific problem. Our first example here is a 3ms suffix with a 3fs imperfect of katal. And notice, before I write this, I want you to notice something. I have to tell you this. And of course, the A here is for the perfect, and the O here for the chametz chatuf holum. And this is for the imperfect imperative. We're doing imperfects. This type of information I have to give to you. And so we're going to be working off a chametz chatuf here. All right. And so we want to do a 3fs. And so this is a chametz chatuf. I want to restore the proto-vowel. Normally it would be holum, but we're restoring the proto-vowel, and so tiktol is the first step. The next step now is to attach the appropriate suffix box, and then we'll establish the accent. And so again, we're looking at a 3 ms suffix, and so we'll put the box on. We'll put our ending on. And now that is the box with the suffix. And notice we have to use the connecting vowel here. It wasn't like a form like a 2fs that would end with that hierarch yod. That would be a vowel so that you could just attach it on directly. We have to supply a connector to put that suffix on. The next thing we have to do is establish the accent. And the accent is on R3. On almost every case, the only exceptions is the heavy suffixes and, of course, the 2ms also. You have to watch for that. Now with that, we're ready to crunch the rules. And remember, we can have one of two rules. If we have a patach as our protoform, then what we're going to have to do is lengthen. But if we have a chametz chatuf or if we have a hierarch, then we're going to have to reduce. And so we're going to reduce the thematic vowel. And indeed, this is going to be our answer. Tiktalehu will be our answer for this. Next, we want to go to the imperative. So look at now at 28, section 3. The imperative generally follows the imperfect. By that, I mean it accents the third root letter. It reduces holem and seire thematic vowels, but it lengthens patach thematic vowels, and it attaches the same boxes and so forth. So there's a lot of similarities between attaching pronominal suffixes to the imperfect and also to the imperative. But the first thing we do need to talk about is protoforms. And so for the first protoform, we want to talk about the 2ms. The call imperfect 2ms, the protoform, you need to learn this. The protoform is really what looks like an original seglet form, like for instance Kodesh. It looks just like this. This is a chametz chatuf, and this is the protoform for this particular form. And so when we attach the pronominal suffix, it's going to be like attaching pronominal suffixes to seglet nouns, really. But remember, we've got to use the suffixes for the verbs, for the imperfects that I give you in this chapter. And so in the example I give you, I have a 2ms imperative with a 1cs suffix. And so you simply attach it on like this. And if you notice for the imperfect, the connecting vowels are usually a seire, sagol, something like that. And so there you see it. And again, the accent would be here. We wouldn't touch this because this is closed and accented. This is fine. However, there is another protoform. Yes, we have the 2ms, but we also have the 2fs and the 2mp. And in those cases, the protoform is different. The protoform is actually this. And this is, again, a chametz chatuf. So you can see in the imperative, you really have a variable vowel. In the 2ms, the chametz chatuf is here. But in the 2fs and the 2mp, the chametz chatuf is here. And so again, it varies. And we'll see this also, the infinitive construct. And so you've got to know, when we're talking about an imperative 2ms, what kind of protoform? Or a 2fs, what kind of protoform? You've got to know those things. Okay, so that's the protoform. And so if we wanted to make a second feminine singular, of course we would have to have the second feminine singular ending. And then if we wanted to put on a 3ms, it would look like this. Your accent is over R3. Notice that this time the suffix is connected directly on. It has a historic long vowel, so again, it doesn't need a connecting vowel. And so now we have to crunch the rules. We've basically put on the ending, we've got the accent, and now we have to reduce, because again, with the chametz chatuf, we reduce. And when we reduce, look what we have. We have the classic situation for a schwa fight, so let them fight it out. And when they get done, it's going to be kit lihu. That's going to be your answer, kit lihu. So again, keep that, watch out for those protoforms. If, on the other hand, instead of having the protoform of chametz chatuf, suppose you had a patach, then we'd have a different answer. And so take the root shalach, and shalach has a, it is It is this, which means it is patach in the imperfect imperative. And so it only has one protoform, and boy, that's good news right there. They don't have two protoforms like the Kamatz Chatuf. It's only one protoform, and I'm showing it to you right now. And so in my example here in the book, I put on a 1cs suffix. So we'll put the box on with the suffix, as you see there. And of course, we'll put the accent with the R3. And so we had the protoform first, we put the box on with the suffix, and then we've established the accent. But this time, instead of reducing here, we're going to actually lengthen, because again, the patachs follow more the noun reduction pattern. And so this patach and an open pretonic syllable gets a long kametz. So, okay, that will be it for the imperative. Again, I also give you the steps, but again, those steps are very similar to the imperfect. Now we go to 28.4, the infinitive construct. And again, you're going to have a variable vowel. Most of the time, the protoform is the same protoform we have for the imperative 2ms. It's this. But other times, especially with second-person suffixes, namely the second masculine singular, and then those heavy suffixes, the 2MP, 2FP, you can get, again, this is a Kamatz Chatuf, you can get this protoform also. So just keep that in mind. So, again, these will work sort of like seglet nouns, and we want to watch out for that. So, as I'm giving you examples here, the first one is an infinitive construct with a 3ms suffix. And when we get to the suffixes of infinitives, remember an infinitive is a verbal noun, and therefore for your infinitive constructs, we will go back to the noun, suffixes of the nouns and the adjectives. That if you go back to chapter 12, you'll see them there. Since again the infinitive construct is a noun, or it's partly noun, we're going to go back to the pronominal suffixes of the noun. So if we do the protoform, all we have to do is add the pronominal suffix that you see for the noun, and this is what you would get. And when you translate this type of construction, notice what I tell you. This can be killing him, or it can be his killing. So you can see the suffix either as sort of like an object, killing him, or you can see it as a subject, his killing. Again, context will have to determine those issues for you. I do want to point out this. This is an infinitive construct with a 3ms. If we were to make this into a imperative, the imperative would differ a bit. The imperative would have a different suffix. The imperative suffix would look different. Of course, it's not following noun suffixes frequently. Most often it's following the verb ones. So that's a difference that you can find sometimes. Sometimes deciding between an infinitive or an imperative, look at what kind of suffix. And if you're looking at a noun suffix, then you know you're dealing with an infinitive construct. But as I've mentioned, there is another protoform that we must watch out for. It's this one here. And you especially see these again with your 2ms, 2mp, and 2fp. And so the example I give you is this. And again, we do not want to put a meth egg here because that is a Kamatz Chatuf. And again, this is either killing you or your killing. Context will have to, again, determine the matter. On the next section, again, I remind you that the infinitive construct takes the pronominal suffixes of nouns, as you see again in chapter 12, section 2. And the suffixes attach to the protoform, as I've mentioned to you. There are a couple of specific problems I want you to look at, and that is the 1cs. The 1cs does have two possible pronominal suffixes. And so if we put the protoform here, the pronominal suffix could just simply be a hirik yod. This is what you would really expect in the sense that this is the noun suffix. But also you can get the ni. You can also get this one. And so you want to be careful of that. So again, you can have variant suffixes. Sometimes they do distinguish meaning. This one usually is more the object, killing me, where if we went the other direction, it's my killing. So occasionally they do show a difference. If you look at number 2 there, I show you some variant forms. You can see how the 2ms suffix can go with either protoform. So with your 2ms, you could get the protoform look like a standard seglet noun, or you can get the protoform that looks like this, either way. So again, keep that in mind. That's true for the 2MP also. For the steps of attaching the boxes, we've basically gone over it. Again, the first thing is restore the protoform. The next step is attach the appropriate box, establish the accent, work any rules of syllables that you need to, and then adjust for any problems that you might have, specific problems that you might have. Next is the derived stems, and we're talking here about, again, the PL and HIFIL. And by PL also we want to include the HIF-PIL. Here you can get sometimes suffixes, pronominal suffixes on nifals, but again, they're not going to cause you much trouble. If you understand how the PL and HIFIL works, I think you're going to be in good shape. Okay. The imperfect and the imperative, it says, for the PL, reduces the thematic vowel with an attached pronominal suffix. And so the example given in the book is this. This is a PL imperfect 3ms with a 1cs suffix. Of course, your accent would be on R3, as you see here. And so the original short vowel here is now, the heroic in an open propretonic syllable reduces. So again, the PL is following the verb reduction pattern. If you look at the next example, we have that same problem that we mentioned earlier. Namely, if you have a 2ms, you can't reduce, because when you reduce, you end up with schwas fighting, and you know that can't happen, and again, it will go to, get rid of this too, it will go to a segol like you see here. So again, that's the end of the schwa fight that you have to watch out for there. Next, we want to look at the infinitive construct. And again, for the PL, the infinitive construct, of course, will take the suffixes of the noun. And we must keep that in mind. But yet, it's going to reduce the thematic vowel just like a verb. And so, the example I give you again in the book. In the example I'm giving you here, you can see the patak is never going to be touched of the PL pa'el because of the dagesh forte here. And what you have here is you have the pronominal suffix, and notice it's the noun pronominal suffix, and so what you get here is reduction of the thematic vowel. So again, it's following the verb reduction pattern as you see here. No problem there at all. The HIFIL shouldn't cause you much trouble at all. The HIFIL, again, is indestructible. You know there cannot be reduction, and because there's no reduction, it makes the HIFIL, I think, one of the easier conjugations to attach pronominal suffixes. Let me show you an example from the book. Here again, we're looking at a HIFIL, which is a hafil, imperfect 3ms with a 1cs suffix attached. And again, there can be no reduction here because you have a historic long. There can be no reduction here. You have a closed unaccented. And again, this is not too bad. One thing you do have to watch out for in the HIFIL, though, there is one form, and that's the imperative 2ms. If you remember, your imperative 2ms is a special sere form. And so it looks like this, haktel. That's the special sere form for for a hifil, imperative 2ms. But when we attach pronominal suffixes, no longer will it be a special sere form, but we'll now go back to what we would have expected the first time, and that's a hierarch yod. And then if we were to attach suffix to this, again, we would have the accent on R3, no reduction in the hifil. We've got a historic long vowel there, no reduction here. We have closed unaccented, so no problem there. Again, for the infinitive construct, the only thing I want to point out to you is it takes the pronominal suffixes, again, of the noun, the suffixes of the noun. And if you remember, once again, that the hifil never reduces, you're going to be in good shape there. We come now to section 6, and that's parsing forms with pronominal suffixes. And you can see the steps that we must do, and so let's look at our example. Here's the example. The first step, as you can see, is to see if we can identify any type of box. And as you look at this form, there's no box, so you know the form has to be a call. The next step is to identify a protoform in the root. And again, you can tell that certainly looks like some type of suffix there at the end. And so you can see the root, and look at the protoform. We have a kametz chatuf. And as soon as I see something like that, immediately two things come to mind. Either an imperative, call imperative 2ms, or a call infinitive construct. So right now I can get down to those two forms. In our next step, we want to identify the suffix. And when I identify the suffix, that suffix is a suffix that you would you expect with a noun. And therefore, already I'm ready to say this is a call infinitive construct with a 3ms suffix on it. It's a noun suffix. And so this, this is a infinitive construct. It's not an imperative. And then, as usual, identify the accented syllable. Of course, that would be here. And the reduction pattern is no problem. It's just like a seglet noun, really. And then adjust for specific problems. There's none here. And so again, what we have here is a call infinitive construct with a third masculine singular suffix. Well, this chapter is very challenging, and so read the chapter carefully before you do your exercises.